here you are again. You've made another accomplishment and struck another goal off of your list. But still, you feel empty, unsatiated. Once the novelty of success has worn off, you think yourself to be unworthy. Someone who is only as good as what they can produce and make happen in the world. And though you have a list of worthy accolades, you equate yourself to all that you have yet to do, as if who you are in between is not enough and unworthy of unyielding positive regard and compassion. As if your intelligence and skill set has somehow diminished. You hide in your shadows and cast spells that shift your reality for the worst. Your self-image morphs into an unrecognizable version of who you truly are, and all you can think to yourself and say is, I'm not good enough. When will I feel fulfilled, abundant, worthy? I'm not as creative or gifted as others. When will I make my mark on this world? This story that you tell yourself ends today. It's so common for a narrative like this to play in our daily lives. How many of us can relate to letting our inner critic run wild, right? Tell us stories about our character. How many of us can relate to self-deprecation in the sake of making others feel comfortable? It's more common, often than not, for people to stoop down in the midst of company out of wanting to feel safe. And the cost of doing so is one that our self-image takes. Our self-image takes a hit for when we diminish ourselves. We mute our shine for the sake of wanting others to feel comfortable. We try so hard to make sure that they don't feel less than, they don't feel in lack, not realizing that by making a choice, you're choosing to put yourself down. And perhaps it's done unconsciously, right? In theory, we don't want to be against ourselves, but oftentimes we do find that our enemy is the person looking back at us in the mirror. The importance of self-image is it shapes the way we see the world, the way we see opportunities, the way we see relationships, right? It impacts your reality. It is the difference between being in constant pursuit of happiness or being in flow with life, knowing that you are worthy, knowing that you are enough as is, that you don't have to chase after anything, that you are not in this world to gain completeness or wholeness because you are already so. When looking at the definition of self-image, one that really stood out to me is that our self-image is an internal dictionary that describes the characteristics of the self, such as intelligence, beauty, talents, etc., right? Our self-image is the personal view or mental picture that we have of ourselves, right? It's not only how we see ourselves, but it's how we think others see us. And so you can see how this can begin to morph into unrecognizable identities if we take account of too many other outside narratives that are projected onto us, right? This is how the self-image is cultivated. It's our internal belief system about ourselves and how others add to that. Whether it's with good intent or not, it leaves a lasting impression. One that can hinder you or one that can catapult you into further growth. I know for me, growing up, I was like low-key a math wizard, right? I was in all of the honors math. I really, really, really enjoyed math. I was geeky and I loved it. I remember like feeling so passionate about math. And then came Algebra 2, Honors Algebra 2, and I could remember it so clearly. Your girl was like, what? Help. And I didn't receive the positive reinforcement that I was used to. And during that semester of math, I felt my confidence drop. I remember being in class every day like, I don't want to be here. And that was a big change for me, right? So similar to a lot of us growing up, we go towards what we're being encouraged about, right? If you hear that you do something really well, naturally you're going to want to do that. There are 4 ways that you can become invested in more of a driving force in molding your own self-image. I say this because a lot of times it's so easy to become our environment. It's so easy to embody the projections of our family, of our friends, and not really be in relation with who we are at our core. It takes a lot of self-reflection. It takes stillness. It takes allowing yourself that space and time to commune with your spirit and ask those provocative questions and see what comes up, right? To truly identify with who you are, what you value, and what's most important to you. So let's get right into it. The first one is to challenge your negative thoughts. Get your inner critic under control. It's too easy. I don't know about y'all, but it's too easy for my inner critic just to run wild, say whatever it wants to about me, right? Not only does it criticize, but it can also minimize and oversimplify things, right? It lives on both ends of the spectrum. And what it does is it takes away from any balance that you have with yourself, right? It's either you're really horrible at something. Oh my goodness, I'm so horrible at math. Or it says, it's not that important. You're too emotional about it. Why are you getting so rattled about this? Your inner critic is harsh. And what helps to get that inner critic to be on your side, or to at least silence the narratives it tries to tell you, is to become aware of its language. How does it sound? How does it make you feel? And being able to, a great practice with this is to journal, right? It's very easy to keep in your mind how you think or feel about a certain situation, about how you feel about your creative endeavors, about the new passion that you're pursuing. It's so easy to catastrophize your skill set. It's so easy to dismiss the things that you are great at. And so a way to bring balance to your inner critic, a way to bring balance to your compassionate voice, is to journal and to get familiar with its language, how it sounds. In becoming familiar with the language your inner critic uses, you can then be intentional about the honesty that's needed, right? As I said, the inner critic lives on either end of the spectrum. It lives in extremes. In 9 times out of 10, there's not enough honesty, and that's what brings the inner critic to go to either end. So bringing in honesty in how you address yourself, how you speak about your wins, how you speak about your lessons and your losses is very important to bring balance into your self narratives, right? It's also getting a hold of those comments that you make that are self-deprecating, and you know it in your spirit. Your intuition has told you multiple times that the way you are referring to yourself is crippling you. It's crippling your self-image, right? So identifying that you are not your mistakes, you are not your circumstance, you are a human living a human experience who has faced adversity, perhaps. You are a human who has made mistakes, but you yourself are not a mistake. Know that in putting yourself down, in demoralizing or self-deprecating yourself is not the solution, right? You are not the problem. The problem is the problem. And so honesty helps you to address those narratives with validity, with strength, and with courage to say, I am separate from my mistakes, my failures, and the opportunities I have for growth. I will work on those things. I will improve, but my mistakes are not who I am. And that's so important. And that brings me to my next point, which is self-compassion, right? As it shows up a lot when speaking about self-image, a lot of us are so hard on ourselves that our self-image is squishing down. It's crippled down by all of the weight of I'm not good enough. It's the weight of a lack of honesty with self, right? I like to think of self-compassion as a practice of speaking to yourself as you would your best friend, right? To your best friend, you're honest. You are truthful with them in identifying if something they could have improved on or a reflection that helps them grow, right? But you're going to tell them in a way that empowers them, that encourages them, that lifts them up. You're going to tell them in a way that they're not leaving the conversation with only the heaviness of a mistake they've made. You're going to leave them with the impression of there's hope to improve and and to grow, and to know that what you are is enough in this time, and what you're going to acquire is just adding on. And I hope the point that is taken from this is that self-compassion is a voice that reminds you that you are enough, you are complete, you are human. Mistakes are okay. They are to be expected. They do not make you who you are. You are not the mistake. You've experienced a mistake. You have tried something and failed, and that's okay. But you are not your failures. Self-compassion helps you to build emotional agility, right? So what that does is lessens the rigidity you feel in moments of overthinking or moments of usual self-deprecation where you want to beat yourself up. Emotional agility will say, let's calm our senses. Let's ground ourselves in truth, right? Let's ground ourselves in honesty. Is what I'm experiencing, what truth does it have in regards to who I am? Ultimately, it's to build that growth mindset, right? As we know, a growth mindset is all about emotional agility, all about being open and receptive to growth while still affirming that you're enough, right? Growth doesn't have to be this icky thing that makes us feel less about ourselves. And that's what can happen when your self-image is embedded in untruth. It's so important to become familiar with your inner critic, right? Become familiar with the language it uses and the narratives it tries to sell to you, so that you can identify them, so that you can lock them in and be able to choose a new trajectory with truth and compassion. And remember that your compassionate voice is one that understands that you're not perfect. Your compassionate voice is going to remind you that we're not here on this earth to strive for perfection. We're, if anything, is to live a pure, heart-led life at it. So every time you have those narratives playing, ask yourself, is this what I would tell my best friend? Is this how I would talk to them? And if it's not, change it. My next point to share with you guys is engage in self-reflection and self-discovery. So self-image is embedded in our belief systems, our values, right? And so it makes it paramount to become familiar with self. A lot of us are leading with the self-image of our family members, our friends, of society, and don't even realize it, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of times our self-image becomes engrossed in our environment and little of what we truly believe ourselves to be. And so having self-reflection and self-discovery a part of your practices can help you become more in touch with who you truly are, right? And this all helps you to cultivate your self-image. And in having a practice of self-reflection and self-discovery, it brings you into relation with the language of your spirit. And by having if you can, a daily practice, right? Or even just a weekly practice of meditating and reading over who you are and the attributes and the skills and the strengths and the characteristics that make you you. When you go out into the world, you're leading with that sense of knowing. And just think of how powerful that is to lead in any situation knowing just who you are. A lot of times it's easy to think that confidence means you're without mistakes, you're without insecurities. No, confidence also comes from knowing what they are and not allowing them to dim your light. And so reflecting on them, but not only those, right? Not only your imperfections, but focusing too on your strengths and naming them is so important. And so engaging in self-reflection and self-discovery helps you to, again, come into relation with who you are, right? And next to that is to create a space filled with all things that represents this self, right? In simple terms, this is get rid of all toxic things, people, places, and things that no longer represent who you are, that no longer resonates with who you want to be. And this can be a powerful tool in helping you to shape the self-image that you want to cultivate. Sometimes it can be difficult to shift that inner narrative. And so manipulating your external world, right? By you shedding the things that no longer serve you, by you integrating the positive habits and routines that encourage the self-image that you want to portray, it helps you to become aligned with that self-narrative, right? It's okay to tap into the resources around you. It's okay to welcome in those habits and routines that help you to reshape your inner narrative, right? Doing inner work takes a lot of self-reflection, as I said earlier. It takes a lot of self-awareness. And this all comes with practice, right? It's something that happens over a span of time. And so tapping into shifting your external world can help you to feel a sense of change relatively quickly. I hope that you do go in it allowing yourself the time it takes, right? That the narrative that you have now, the self-image that you have now, reflect on that, of how it took time for you to sink into the self-narrative, the self-image that you have now. It took years for that to come about. So as you go on to cultivate a new one that feels more pure, more centered to you, allow yourself that time, right? And as you go on this journey, continue to create an environment that's conducive to the self-image that you want to portray. A quote that I found that really spoke to me was, "The fact that someone else loves you doesn't rescue you from the project of loving yourself." And with that, I say, continue to pour into the self-image that feels true to you. Know that you are in full control of constructing an image of yourself that you feel good about, that you believe in, that you have full autonomy in who you want to be in this life and in this world. Don't allow anyone to dictate that for you. Their projections are only significant if you want them to be. Know that you are in control. So bring that self-image to the forefront and lead your life as that